look at me.
In part 2 of my analysis of MLP Season 9, I will be looking at the episodes between the two-parters. These are Uprooted, Frenemies, Between Dark and Dawn, and The Summer Sun Setback. I will treat these in a little less detail than the two-parters. In particular, the first one is liable to a lot of criticism that I will not go over, for this video is meant to lay the groundwork for the ending of the end, and not to analyze side characters who will only feature as a cameo. In this episode, the Student 6 are contacted by the Tree of Harmony in the form of Twilight Sparkle. This is despite the fact that the tree was destroyed in the previous episode.
But the tree couldn't have called you. It's gone. Sombra destroyed it.
Not only Twilight, but Ocellus too is keen on this season's contrived plot progression.
But doesn't that mean the Everfree Forest will take over Equestria?
We've got that part under control. And Sombra won't be coming back. So, some good news, right?
Yeah, that fixes it. One thing I haven't touched upon yet is the idea that Starswell kept the Everfree under control before the Tree of Harmony. What is conflicting with this explanation is that the tree was planted by Starswell and the other pillars right before they banished themselves to Limbo. Unless upon planting it the seed was immediately powerful enough to hold back the whole forest, there was a span of years in which the Everfree was free to expand, and the unlikeliness of this explanation is corroborated by half the pillars.
Each of us infused a crystal seed with our magic in hopes that it would grow into a force for good.
We wanted to leave something to protect the realm in our absence, but we never dreamed our gift would become so powerful.
We had no idea our small seed would bloom into the living spirit of the land.
In any case, the students want to create a memorial for the tree, and each goes about it in his own way. Sandbar gets rid of the tree's remains because that makes perfect sense, and they have a silly fight over how to best honor the memory of the tree.
Step right up, walk this way. Welcome to the one, the only, the magical Tree of Harmony Museum. Come, see the birthplace of the tree. Grown from the tears of a basilisk, and tended day and night by pony magicians. This is truly one of the wonders of Equestria.
Gallus, none of that actually true.
So, honoring the tree means giving it a story that creatures will care about.
It already has a great story.
Yeah, but mine makes more sense.
Whatever.
I'm afraid I'm with Gallus here. Though I like the idea behind the Tree of Harmony, you have to admit that its lore is rather incoherent. And ironically, this very episode may be the worst offender. The students fight, everything falls apart, and Yona explains that, just like the elements, the tree isn't really destroyed but actually lives on in their hearts. But if that's the case, why did the tree send out a distress signal? And isn't Equestria's harmony still in jeopardy because the Everfree Forest is still trying to expand? It's not that any of this matters, because the tree spirit won't be seen again after this episode, and the tree's magic doesn't become a plot point. They decide how they want to commemorate the tree, and Yona retrieves the tree's remains because guess what? They were just hidden barely out of sight.
Where did you find it?
Oh, I didn't move it too far. It was kind of heavy.
And you're just mentioning this now.
If they had taken 2 seconds to search around the place, they wouldn't have had to fight it out. They then sing a song and use the tree's branches to build a treehouse, which spontaneously grows into an even larger crystal treehouse. The tree spirit explains.
Because of you, the spirit of the treehouse would have perished without your selfless deeds and caring. Whenever you seek solace, come here. Your friendship, and the friendship of future generations, will always be safe within these walls.
They used the remains of a perished legendary entity and turned it into a shoddy treehouse, a place where we belong, to quote the song. That's nice and all, but I don't think that really qualifies as a profound selfless deed. Maybe if they had put in effort to replant the tree, and through that safeguard Ponyville from the threatening plunderseed vines, or simply help ponies in their day-to-day routines, this ending would have been more justified. There is nothing selfless about this outcome. They didn't make a personal sacrifice, no pony benefited from it, they just finished a glorified arts and crafts project, and the reward is a place of refuge which, as far as we get to see, is mainly for their own personal use.
I guess the tree is still alive, changing and adapting to be whatever Equestria needs.
A cool place to hang out?
Something tells me this is more than that. It seems the elements of harmony may still be with us in their own way.
I suppose it is through this line that the S-pools of the ending of the end are justified, but even if we accept the premise that the main six can now launch friendship lasers without the elements, what Twilight says still doesn't make sense. She suggests that the treehouse of friendship is not just a monument but the agent through which harmony persists. But already in the season opener, Twilight & Co. defeated Sombra with a friendship laser. At that point, the treehouse didn't exist yet, so you cannot say that it channels friendship magic, or something along those lines. And what is it with this phrasing, in their own way? The elements don't have a particular way of doing anything. Twilight is just making stuff up. Must be your memories of feeling Pinky Keen speaking here. That episode had a bad tendency to obscure magic lore, but this one takes the cake.
But why did the tree need our help to become something new? I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I'd say your friendship is more powerful than you know.
Given the events of What Lies Beneath and School Race, aren't they already the most likely candidates for such a task? Maybe something about a new start and the Student 6 representing a new generation? Silverstream is asking a question that can be fairly answered, but then again, Silverstream should be aware of their special bond and not ask this question in the first place. So many questions are asked, and none are resolved, so let's move on to the next episode. Now this episode is most interesting. In my experience, it is regarded as one of Season 9's best episodes. It establishes lore, character dynamic, and character development, which is something that has become quite rare over the years. Its plot is for the most part coherent and comes with a pretty unique song to boot. It hints at a profound conflict within the villains, and at the same time appeared to lay the groundwork for an emotional and rewarding finale in spite of the poor start. But at the time being the key words here, because the subtext people took from it turned out to be incorrect, and the episode seemed good by total accident. The ending of the end spawned a fanfiction subgenre which attempts to salvage the lore to provide a better ending for the show. Frenemies and its deceptively promising storyline are the main raison d'être, so let's look at the episode from a chronological perspective. The episode starts off in Groger's lair, with the villains bickering among each other. Cozy is being cheeky, Tyrek is slowly driven mad, and Chrysalis is full of sass. This simple premise is already charged with characterization. We are used to seeing the villains as power-hungry and pure evil, their backstories were virtually non-existent, and their malicious intent keeps the viewer on edge. But now enter frenemies, and you see the same villains who tried to bring Equestria to ruin arguing over household chores. This has a strong effect of humanization. Despite their ill will and dark powers, they are subject to the same impulses as we are, have their personal tics and, if only for a brief window of time, don't seem all that deadly. A plot doesn't always benefit from a laser-guided series of plot events. Sometimes it needs a silly, unexpected detour, or a quasi-pointless conversation to breathe life into the characters, and this episode has plenty of that. We see Cozy Glow hanging up a self-drawn banner of her and the others, reminding us that she is still a child at heart. She annoys Tyrek, who is doing bench presses to an imposing picture of himself. She then finds Chrysalis, who is annoyed to have been discovered talking to the evil Twilight Lock from the Mean Six. Seems like foreshadowing her return in the finale. She gathers the two for a meeting, and the picture of Chrysalis bursting into anger as Tyrek nonchalantly sucks away her magic and then spits it out over a cupcake is just hilarious. Their personal flaws and quirks are explored in front of the audience to the utmost, to the point of singing a whole song about it, and you can't help warming up to them in the process. The song isn't all gags either. The viewer is reminded of each of the villains' personal goals and lays a basis for cooperation amongst them, which hasn't been seen before. It's one of those points that is really best done in song, as a direct scene showing the villains dabbling into teamwork would inevitably come over as bloated. The next step of Groger's plan is to retrieve his bewitching bell, and it expands on the bite-sized lore we got in the beginning of the end. Even before the age of Celestia and Luna, Groger ruled the lands until he was defeated by Gusty the Great, and his bell was sealed away. Not only does this give a picture of Equestria as far back as possible, it also conveys the importance of the MacGuffin, sets up the mission, and hints at how Grogar could possibly be defeated. Gusty, by the way, is another character inspired by G1. She has the same allure as Starswirl, except she is posited in a clearly defined historical era, whereas Starswirl's legacy was whatever plot point the writers needed to sell as ancient, big and important. I'm not saying Gusty should be more beloved than him, but she has the potential for a better story. If they chose to do more with it, that is.
The bell cannot be destroyed, so Gusty hid it in a place it has taken me millennia to discover. An enchanted cave high atop Mount Everhoof, protected by magical winds that prevent any pony from reaching its peak.
This is in my opinion the only part of the legend that is weak. Grogar was capable of drawing Sombra from the Aether, so why did he have trouble locating it? And if he is so powerful, why didn't he retrieve it himself? Just say that the protective spell that Gusty put over it negates his powers or something along those lines, so he has no choice but to give it as a task to the three villains. And besides, Mount Everhoof isn't really the most creative name. Anyway, they get to the foot of Mount Everhoof, and each decides to go his own separate way. Here once again the three characters are strongly distinguished by their personalities. Cozy first tries to get the others to work along, and later uses her diabolical charms at some pony. Chrysalis goes in by herself, showing off her creepy nature and transformation skills, and Tarek assesses the situation and simply decides to wait it out. At the end of the day, Cozy ends up back at the camp, and what we get is another arguing scene in which they are even further fleshed out. Cozy snores in her sleep, and Tarek has a Gram who he deeply cares about. Is there a better way to garner sympathy for someone than showing that he loves his grandma? It's something most of us are familiar with, and it isn't as ham-fisted as a love interest or a childhood friend. Then they are attacked, but Chrysalis shows up and consumes her prey in what is one of the most gross scenes in the entire show. Yet, at the same time, she's so chill about it, it's endearing. This is the true Chrysalis we are now looking at, creepy and cute at the same time. Cozy eats a marshmallow in the most adorable way possible, and they exchange banter over their misadventures. These characters are actually bonding, and it's so sincere and natural that we haven't seen anything like it in ages. After this scene, they finally got it within themselves to work together to scale the mountain, and they overcome the obstacles by combining their skills in a way that actually makes sense. Arriving at the top, they are tested with one more challenge.
Can you absorb it and make it go away?
I can only absorb magic from living beings.
Like her?
Betrayal!
You can understand Chrysalis's protest here, but at the same time, they have already gone through so much together that her faith in her companions is well founded. And at the same time, Cozy Glow is putting her own life on the line by getting in and out of the force field just in the nick of time. It's pretty weird that casting a beam of energy at it allows her to pass through, and they could have better made it so that Tarek opens a hole with his bare hands, but I'm glad they did the moral aspect of this scene right. Tarek is obviously elated by his new power, whereas Chrysalis is in a pathetic state. Her faith in her teammates on one hand, and his resolve to restore her magic on the other is a convincing test of character. If you think about it, it's really a trustful exercise, put into practice. And now, we arrive at the crowning moment of the episode.
I wasn't sure you were going to give it back.
Neither was I. But working together seemed smarter than to continue fighting.
When we helped each other, it felt better somehow.
I haven't felt like this since before I lost my hive. Having others who will be there for you is pleasing.
Grogar commanded these three villains, simply to work together, but at the end of the journey they have discovered real friendship. Even Chrysalis, the most troublesome and revenge-bent of the three, yields. She even seems as if she is about to undergo the transformation as her children did. Changelings aren't evil by nature after all. This whole episode garnered so much sympathy for the villains that it became virtually impossible to foresee a bad ending for them.
No! The magic of friendship is like a disease, an infection that spreads to those around you. I watched it infect my hive. I will not let it get me.
Same!
Obviously.
Though they might still be evil, and though they might reject friendship in the spur of the moment in this scene, they now have a set of firmly established redeeming qualities. In the eyes of the audience, they have turned from villains to anti-heroes. In their next appearance, I would be cheering for them realizing their seemingly inevitable redemption as much as I would cheer for the main six. For now though, they hide the bell from Grogar and conspire to overthrow him when the time is right. And just as a last note, maybe it's not the best idea to hide this glowing artifact in the cave itself. It begs the question of how Grogar located the bell in the first place. Did he use his scrying orb to see where it was? In that case, he could just keep track of the villains and see them obtaining the MacGuffin. Did he detect its magical aura? If so, why isn't he sensing it when it's right next to him? It might make for a good visual stinger, but just because such important objects were seemingly indetectable and uprooted doesn't mean it's good writing. It's a regrettable flaw in an otherwise very strong episode, or at least that's what it looked like at the time. How could they go wrong with this?
Remind me how this happened again?
And why there's a giant turtle eating my family's entire summer crop?
And now for something completely different. The main six dealing with the monster of the week. They just about finish the job when out of nowhere the princesses appear and begin attacking the creature with laser beams. It's completely unnecessary and they probably caused more mayhem than they would have stopped, but it turns out that this wasn't really about a threat as it was about their own midlife crises.
No need to thank us. To be honest, we've recently realized we like being part of the action.
Experiencing life, instead of just dreaming about it.
And making a difference outside the throne room.
In the season opener, the royal sisters wanted to retire because they needed a little R&R. But now all of a sudden, they crave excitement. If that's the case, then they'd better scrap that retirement to Silver Shoals and move to Ponyville instead. In any case, despite their no doubt busy time in Canterlot, the royal sisters keep bothering the ponies under the impression that they're heroes. Even the main six are annoyed by it. Man, this stirs up bad memories of the mysterious mare duel. Their sudden change in attitude is so jarring, it's hard to imagine these are the regal individuals who have ruled Equestria for so many years. Now, Celestia has always had a bit of a mischievous streak, but that's nothing compared to her current hysterics. If anything, it shows us what they should have acted like. This one type of behavior does not lie in the extent of the other. Ultimately, they decide that they want to go on a vacation to do all the things they never got the chance to do. First of all, saving the world and going on camping are completely different things. You could argue you get the same adrenaline kick from ziplining as you get from combating a giant tortoise, but it still has nothing to do with being part of the action in a heroic sense. Secondly, the princesses are retiring in a couple of months anyway, so why the haste? Even Twilight is aware of this.
Don't worry. We'll cover your palace duties. It'll be a good chance for us to practice for when you retire.
Either check off everything from your bucket list and then go back to ruling Equestria, or just save it for your impending retirement. This episode does not need to exist, at least not right now.
Fun not yet had. I can't wait to start planning our time off.
A chance to do whatever we want. And you know what that means. Relaxation!
So, despite the ass kicking at the start of the episode, it turns out that what Luna really wants is to relax, because she has been doing this sort of stuff in Pony's dreams for several years already. I just can't get over the fact that Luna is talking about retirement when she's on the job less than 1% of her sister. Celestia, on the other hand, craves excitement. All the time in the throne room has made her forget how fun it is to fight powerful foes. This is surprising because Celestia has done that on a few occasions. She was involved in the changeling attack in a Canterlot wedding, got kidnapped in Princess Twilight Sparkle, and helped face Terek in Twilight's Kingdom. She was there when Chrysalis attacked for the second time, and she was there when Canterlot was beleaguered by the Storm King. Even if we disregard all these instances in which she was completely useless, there was also the Crystalling, where she defended the Citadel from magical blizzards. Her saying she didn't know what she was missing out on is a really poor excuse. Wasn't she the one who tasked Twilight to expel the dragon that threatened to cover Equestria in smoke? Didn't she deliberately guide Twilight to defeat Discord on her own? And did she not anticipate Sombra's return and send Twilight to fix it? That also reminds me of something else that bugs me about this whole episode. Namely, that it implies that being the ruler of Equestria is boring as all hell. I can understand this type of plot if you take it by itself. But within the context of the arc, it shoots itself in the foot because Twilight is about to fulfill the very role that Celestia and Luna are now so eagerly trying to escape from. They glorified the thing Twilight is doing right now, and loathe the thing that Twilight is about to become, and basically say, once you ascend to the throne, all this excitement of going on journeys, battling bad guys, and being involved in action in general is going to be part of the past. There is still dream patrolling, but apparently that will get repetitive after a couple of years, and eventually you'll become just like us. Twilight will get a protege on her own, who gets to go on the dangerous missions while she is stuck in Canterlot, until said protege is seasoned enough to take over, and the cycle begins anew. That's the picture they are sketching here. Now, back to the episode.
If it's written down, I'm sure we can handle it. Have fun!
One more thing. We're leaving you in charge of raising the sun and moon while we're gone.
Somehow, they put the power to raise the sun and the moon into an amulet. Bear in mind that according to official material, this is a feat that cost multiple unicorns their magic forever every day before Celestia took on the job. It's an awfully convenient device, but I suppose it retroactively explains how in School Race, all magic in ponies could have been gone for 3 days, and still the sun and the moon were moving.
We have put a small part of our power in this amulet. You can activate it with your magic at any time, preferably dawn and dusk.
Shouldn't it be between dark and dawn, just like the title of the episode? I really don't know why they went for dark instead of dusk, since dusk is the onset of darkness, and the dark falls between dusk and dawn, but I digress. From here the episode follows a scheme that can best be described as a combination of The Road to Friendship and On Your Marks. It involves ponies going on a trip and getting on each other's nerves, and also involves them drifting apart due to a lack of shared interests. I will give the episode credit for making references to earlier episodes. We get to see this pony from Hard to Say Anything, we see Jackpot and Big Buck from Granny's Gone Wild, and there's Iron Will's waterfall diving business, etc. Back in Canterlot, Twilight is being stubborn for the 1000th time. She rejects the aid of the Royal Swanifying Committee because she thinks that the 6 of them need to be able to take care of everything in the world by themselves. She believes that this task, one she volunteered for, is supposed to be yet another demonstration of her capabilities, even though she already got Celestia's express approval after defeating Sombra. Granted, coordinating an annual celebration is a much better test of competence than defeating an evil villain, but she is still misguided, and with that I mean she ignores the lesson that she learned in the opener.
Celestia, Luna, I know what you're gonna say. I should have called on you as soon as I knew how dangerous it was. A good leader knows when to ask for help, and I didn't.
Fancy Pants is naturally surprised at Twilight's rejection, but for some reason he seems to take it personal. Okay.
If we ask for help, it's just like admitting we're not as good at the job as Luna and Celestia are. Besides, how hard can throwing a swan party be?
Twilight, do you know why such a thing as the Royal Swanifying Committee exists? Why their members walk in to offer their existence without even being aware that Twilight and her friends have taken over for a day? It's because the princesses cannot handle everything by themselves. The princesses try taking turns with the activities they go on, but it quickly seems as if they were having more fun at the Canterlot court than on vacation. It gets to the point that Luna insinuates that Celestia never wanted to have her back, so that she could still rule day and night. It needn't be said that this is an extremely grave accusation, as the problem of jealousy was what led to Luna's banishment on the moon, and the relative burdens of their duties was also a topic quite recently in a royal problem. It gets intense when they start shouting at each other in the royal Canterlot voice, and Celestia even returns the insult.
Fine! I just remembered something I forgot I always wanted to do. Be alone!
Guess we have the same thing on both of our lists then.
Compare this to Friendship is Magic Part 2.
I'm so sorry. I missed you so much, big sister.
I've missed you too.
Thanks, Season 9, for showing that those tears are worth as much as the squabbles of an annoying vacation trip. Twilight is still causing a mess in the palace until she finally expresses her embarrassing misapprehension in the form of a direct question, and Fancy Pants gives it to her straight.
Oh, how droll.
What's the funny part, exactly?
The princesses never do all the ceremony planning by themselves.
They don't?
Goodness, no. That's what the gala planning committees are for. No pony could handle all this.
If he had mentioned this a couple of scenes earlier, instead of walking away, this chaos would never have ensued, but for some reason he decided to sit and wait until Twilight had that dumbstruck expression on her face and he could humiliate her. Her mood switches immediately.
Ooh, new plan, every pony. We're going to delegate.
I love the tone and expression with which she says this. It's like in Winter Wrap-Up, when she saves the day by taking charge and putting everyone to work in an efficient manner. Here she does the same thing, except all of this was already supposed to be handled by the committee. So we have Season 1, in which her role as leader came naturally and was cleverly applied, and we have Season 9, where Twilight has been a princess for 5.5 seasons and grins boldly as she finds out that the country is run by more than 2 persons. This episode doesn't just get Twilight's character wrong, it takes the thing she's supposed to be good at, replaces it with cartoonish incompetence, and then celebrates an insight so trivial that she frankly comes across as stupid. Since there are now only 3 minutes left on the episode, Celestia and Luna quickly realize they are better off together than alone, and apologize to each other. They cut their vacation short and offer no practical advice on how to deal with diverging interests on a vacation, but at least they have a heartfelt moment. Twilight having trouble with the amulet is a funny note to end on, but it's also somewhat tragic, as it is essentially her failing at the princess's jobs again. Even when she succeeds, she can't seem to help but to mess up. At this point, it just hurts to compare it to Winter Wrap-Up, because in that one Twilight scored a satisfying victory, both for herself and for Ponyville, and managed to articulate it in terms of a clear-cut moral. All things considered, we got an episode that has done nothing good. Celestia and Luna behave like little girls, they go on a vacation when it's really not a time for that. It tears open old wounds, only to rush the resolution, and probably most damning of all, it resets Twilight's character to an uninspired caricature of what she was like at the conception of the series. Twilight's final test has taken on the shape of an elementary insight, one that she should already be familiar with, and this is going to be carried through until the finale. In a way, the Summer Sun setback is very similar to the last episode. It's again about the main 6 having to organize a festival in Canterlot, and they have to work together to succeed at it, as we shall see. But it is distinct in that it is another episode that builds up the villain side of the story. The episode opens up at the villain's lair. Groger is frustrated because he thinks Tyrek, Cozy, and Chrysalis failed to obtain the bewitching bell, so he comes up with another plan.
Since you 3 were unable to retrieve my bewitching bell, we need another source of great magical power to defeat Twilight and her friends.
Or Groger could just go to Mount Everhoof and get the bell himself. As far as he knows, it's still right there. After all, the main reason he let his minions do the work was because it would improve their teamwork. Now that they have failed, he could still go there himself, couldn't he? He has shown he can teleport to any place he desires, even through the barriers of the Crystal Empire. The force field surrounding the bell would have been no problem at all for him, but because that would make him realize he's being lied to, he's going after some other MacGuffin instead. Anyway, the villains want to use the bewitching bell against Grogar, but they don't know how to use it. They reason that they can find an instruction guide in the restricted area of the Canterlot archives, and thus have to infiltrate the city. This, however, just so happens to take place on the night of the Summer Sun celebration. Once again, Twilight has been put in charge. I don't really know why, but perhaps the princesses figured that they wanted to give Twilight another chance at holding the reins, after she didn't do so great organizing the royal swanifying.
We know you're busy planning the Summer Sun celebration as we requested.
I wanted to show you with the Summer Sun celebration how much I've improved. So I focused on delegating and trusting others. It's been great!
You can clearly see that Twilight is settling into the role of ruler of Equestria when she's letting others do the dirty work for her. Cynicism aside, I just love that phrasing. focusing on delegating and trusting others. It's as if she's constantly assigning duties to random ponies and praying they won't mess it up. You know, maybe being the supreme ruler isn't that bad of a job for Twilight. She would love the endless checklist that would come with it. But then again, her obsession with books and figures is the reason Celestia sent her away from Canterlot. Her going back there for that reason would be an incredibly ironic twist.
Of course not. It's just that the celebration has always been about us. My defeat of Luna.
And, thanks to you and your friends, my reunion with my sister.
Now that we're leaving, we don't see a need for the holiday any longer.
Why? Isn't Celestia's reunion with Luna still an event worth celebrating? Not in the least because the pony taking over is the one who brought Luna back. It's also simply a beautiful astronomical event, a celebration on the longest day of the year. And now Celestia and Luna just want to get rid of it. What a shame.
My sister and I have decided the time for us to retire is upon us. You and your friends have proven you are ready to lead Equestria. So let this be the last Summer Sun celebration, as Equestria leaves behind the old to embrace the new.
You can probably argue endlessly about the value of traditions and whether or not progress is inevitable, but I'm not going to do that here. I just really find it despicable that Celestia wants to usher in a new era of Equestria by cancelling one of its oldest traditions. This isn't like She's All Yak, where Twilight reforms the Fetlock Fete into the Amity Ball to make it more inclusive for the 5 non-ponies. Because here they want to get rid of it altogether. Doesn't Celestia know how much ponies love this festivity? For one, it's the occasion that inspired Twilight to study magic. And yet she seems hardly phased either.
Please don't give us more work. Please don't give us more work. Please don't give us more work. So even though everything was done, I thought of a few last-minute changes I could use your help with. Ah, I knew it!
Come on, Rainbow. Aren't you excited to combine your Wonderbolt's career / teacher role at a School of Friendship with paperwork in Canterlot? You wanted this, right? Remember? Discord enters the scene, and each of the ponies only gets a flashcard worth of stuff to do, because Twilight has learned that you shouldn't give ponies an impossible workload.
Oh, character growth is so boring. Can't talk now. Have so much to get done before sunrise.
There's one thing I should address at this point. While the twist in the finale came out of left field, it does seem like the writers were insinuating Discord's involvement here. This isn't the first time he talks about how busy he is, and each time the scene cuts to the villains. But even so, we see only these 3, and not Grogar. Also, Discord takes the other main 6 with him when he teleports out, which makes it seem like he was doing something innocuous here. If he was really that busy doing stuff with the bad guys, would he make a detour taking along the main 6? The villains try to sneak into the castle, but they fail. They can't fly in, thanks to the contraptions from Twilight 7, which the ponies haven't cleared up yet and are harming wildlife. And they can't walk in, because security has been increased. Yet, for some reason they didn't bother putting up a force field. Don't they know that Chrysalis is still at large and could strike at any time in their moment of weakness, now that the Tree of Harmony is destroyed? And come to think of it, in Twilight's kingdom, Celestia and Luna were warned about Tyrek because they had a nightmare. But now, when the threat is 4 times as large, they remain clueless. Regardless, they are lucky they can walk around at all, especially Tyrek.
Increased security on a crowded holiday with Twilight and her friends bumbling around? This is impossible.
Then just come back on literally any other day. You still have weeks until Grogar plans to make his move.
If any pony can handle some last-minute bacon, Brayburn, it's y'all.
We brought plenty for the celebration. If she keeps testing, we might be in trouble.
This is ridiculous. Twilight sends Pinky and AJ to make adjustments to the menu, but then Pinky eats everything under the pretext of taste testing, and this makes the problem bigger than it was. I know this is just for laughs, but there's something wrong about Pinky being a spanner in the works in regards to party organization. The plan of the villains here is to cause enough confusion to allow an opportunity to slip inside, but some of them aren't going about it the best way. Tyrek is hiding in the bushes, absorbing Pony's magic. Their tiredness should be a familiar symptom from back when Tyrek attacked a few years ago, so if anything this should just be alarming security. Meanwhile the weather guy is having a panic attack because the schedule change appears pretty huge, and I just cannot stand the way that Fluttershy, who knows nothing about weather duty at all, tells the organizer to just relax.
No big It's a much more aggressive weather pattern than what was originally ordered. This is very irregular. We'll need to... No, first we must... Wait, we...
Take a breath. Let it out slowly.
Cozy drops by and offers to help him with some stuff. I don't know why this guy hasn't heard of the massive magic outage last year caused by Cozy Glow, or why he doesn't give a second thought to getting help from a seemingly random filly, but it works. It kind of goes against the delegation narrative, when the specific experts are incapable of handling the changes too. Chrysalis decides to take some kind of fascist approach and inspires in the fireworks team a sense of inadequacy.
Unicorns wield magic. We are the most powerful ponies in the land. Don't you ever feel you're destined for more than performances?
Not really, seeing that a fireworks explosion is this pony's cutie mark, and therefore firework performances are literally her destiny. And the same is true for the other unicorns, I bet. So, because of this, there are suddenly all sorts of problems, and when Twilight walks in, her friends try to hide it from her. And I have to ask again, why? Didn't they hear Celestia's words in the season premiere?
A good leader knows when to ask for help, but a great leader has the courage to admit when they've made a mistake, and the strength to make it right.
Apparently they estimate Twilight's stress tolerance level that lowly. It's all the more surprising that Twilight doesn't notice anything because there's a thunderstorm going on. Or Brayburn, who was at the verge of collapsing but apparently decided to leave the throne room again. Does no one care about him? It's impossible that Twilight won't go 2 minutes without finding out what's going on.
Explain to me why we didn't tell her the truth.
The others explain to her that Twilight has finally eased up, and letting her in on the trouble would stress her out. Because hiding the truth from the person in charge is a good idea. You know that keeping Twilight in the dark about her responsibilities is a bad idea, right, Spike? Or you, Pinky? You've dealt with too much responsibility before, haven't you?
What do y'all suggest?
Ask the princesses for help?
Let's just fix it all before she notices. No lying necessary.
You already lied, but sure. Solve this problem of food poisoning, chaotic weather and a cancelled performance all on your own. I feel like I shouldn't be so hard on the plot of a basic TV show, but by now we've been through 9 seasons of this and these ponies should know better. Half the cast has dealt with this exact moral before, and they were even recently reminded. Twilight's mental state is simply not an excuse.
Even if I was an actual doctor, I would have no idea what's wrong.
How do you know? You're not a doctor. Call one! The villains make their move. They openly reveal themselves to this guard over here, which was probably a bad idea since he will live to tell what he saw, but luckily the plot forgets about it, and once they are inside, they aren't coming up against a single guard. Meanwhile, Twilight finds out about a disastrous state of things in less than 2 minutes. She finally behaves the way she's supposed to behave, and we get this montage, which I actually think is pretty sweet. On one hand, we have the ponies working together to fix the festival, while on the other, we see the villains inching closer and closer to their objective. The music is ominous, yet it has this air of solemnness to it, as if both parties are marching to their inevitable confrontation. It's definitely the most memorable part of the episode. They get the weather under control. They take care of the ponies who have gotten sick, presumably we don't actually see it. They manage to talk some sense into the performers, and the day is saved. Twilight announces that instead of the Summer Sun celebration, there's going to be something called the Festival of the Two Sisters, which is basically the exact same thing except it blandly commemorates Celestia and Luna rather than their deeds. They also still celebrate sunrise at the peak of summer, so the name change is completely pointless. We get one last scene with the villains, of which I only have a couple of closing remarks.
Once again, I've found success where you all find failure. I have located what I sought, and tomorrow I will set out to retrieve it. When I return, Equestria will finally be ours for the taking.
As far as Grogar knows, the villains have been chilling all day, and he has only located this other artifact, so I wouldn't call it a success quite yet, but that hardly matters.
You know, it really was super easy to get all those Earth ponies and Pegasi and unicorns to turn on each other.
Actually, it was only the unicorns who turned on the rest, but yeah, that was incredibly easy. It's hard to believe that with just a little push in the right direction, ponies forget about love and friendship and everything that has bound the tribes together for more than 1,000 years. In any case, the path to the finale now lies open. The villains have their magical artifact, the day of the coronation is on the horizon, and we all cannot wait for the final showdown.